For over 80 years, the halls of the Australian Parliament have been dominated by a rigid political duopoly. Power trades back and forth predictably between the centre-left Labour Party and the conservative Liberal National Coalition. It's a comfortable status quo that perfectly mirrors the traditional political establishment in the United Kingdom, where legacy parties have maintained a polite grip on governance for generations. But right now, those legacy conservative coalitions are losing voters. Internal tensions and a perceived drift away from working-class priorities are causing support to hemorrhage at a historic rate. That collapse in trust has created a political vacuum. It has left century-old institutions completely exposed to outsiders, insurgents who know exactly how to tap into rising cultural grievances. In Australia, the politician rushing into that space is Senator Pauline Hanson, founder of One Nation. If you read international media, you'll often see her described as Australia's Nigel Farage. The comparison to the UK reform movement is explicit and intentional. She is currently outpolling the mainstream conservative opposition, and she's doing it by ditching the polished political script entirely, pitching herself as a scrappy outsider fighting to take the country back. She is executing a specific playbook to upend a century of political history, utilizing mechanics that resonate with a global audience. This strategy follows the same highly effective, repeatable architecture, powering right-wing populism across the entire Western world. This diagram models the first pillar of her strategy, the argument that a cohesive nation is being deliberately fractured by multiculturalism. Hanson claims that elites actively push for this fragmentation to break down national identity, making the population easier to control. To make that abstract fear concrete, populists tie sudden domestic tragedies to broader immigration policies. Following a devastating mass stabbing at Bondi Junction in December, Hanson explicitly framed the attack as a failure of assimilation, pointing the finger at imported ideologies. Her proposed policy solutions are blunt. She demands a complete ban on the burka, a total halt to Islamic migration into Australia, and making cultural practices like first cousin marriage illegal. Proposing these severe policies is a deliberate mechanism. She draws a hard line in the sand that establishment politicians are too afraid to touch, granting her a monopoly on authentic conservative outrage. The playbook also looks inward. The second pillar targets domestic institutions accused of pushing woke cultural agendas. A major target is the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, the ABC. Hanson argues this publicly funded network operates with an overwhelming left-wing bias, and she wants to completely cut its $1.2 billion annual budget. She applies that same logic to the Special Broadcasting Service, the SBS. Originally created for migrant programming, she now describes it as an unnecessary taxpayer burden. She also aims her fire at modern social policies, campaigning fiercely against gender self-identification in hospitals and the teaching of gender fluidity to young children in schools. Combining attacks on state-funded media with a rejection of modern gender ideology creates a potent mix. It reaches a demographic that feels alienated and silenced by rapid social changes. The third pillar takes aim at the state's handling of Aboriginal affairs. For decades, successive governments have struggled to close the health and wealth gap for remote Indigenous communities. It remains a deeply complex, systemic national issue. This flowchart demonstrates how Hanson reframes that complex history. She portrays Aboriginal affairs as a corrupt $30 billion a year industry. In her narrative, taxpayer money flows to elite land councils, while only a trickle reaches the communities that actually need it. This rhetorical pivot converts the complex issue into a simple economic grievance for the working-class voter. When Hanson first delivered these arguments in her 1996 maiden speech, she was widely pilloried and pushed to the political fringe. Today, she argues that the culture has caught up with her. She points to current social unrest as the exact consequence she predicted 30 years ago. And she has the momentum to back it up. She is actively assembling a shadow establishment, even poaching a former deputy prime minister to build a viable governing team. This playbook has established One Nation as a formalized institutional threat to the established political order. Her success highlights how reliable this playbook is across borders. Hanson's resurgence relies on the same tactics utilized by Nigel Farage and other conservative insurgents abroad. The repeatable formula is visible right here. By synthesizing cultural nostalgia, anti-institutional distrust, and economic frustration, these politicians create a single movement. This formula isn't unique to Australia. It is replicating in the UK, across Europe and in North America. The modern political landscape is highly susceptible to this strategy. Across continents, voters are being united by one emotional rallying cry: I want my country back.